Ma'am, now we are Facebook Live.
Okay.
Aprajita, start at exact 11.
Yes, ma'am. Another 5 minutes.
Arvind ji, please open your video and audio. Arvind ji, Mr. Arvind, please open your audio and video. Ma'am, we have 5 minutes to start the program.
Priya, it is 11. We can start.
करेंगे मैडम स्टार्ट करो
Yes, ma'am. We can start now. Rajita, ma'am, we can start now.
बंदे
Namaskar and a very good morning to one and all. On behalf of National Law University Delhi and Association of Indian Universities, I welcome you all to the AIU Annual National Conference on Vice Chancellors on Reimagining Indian Universities from August 17th to August 18th, 2020. I'm your host for the session, Dr. Aparajita Bhatt. This year, the AIU conference and the AIU Foundation Day, as well as the conference, is going to be quite unique as it's being conducted through the online mode. We have eminent guests and 500 distinguished vice chancellors and academicians present today in this virtual conference. This year, we had planned that the AIU conference shall be conducted on its Foundation Day. The Foundation Day is celebrated every year on 23rd of March. But however, due to COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdown, the conference couldn't be conducted on the scheduled day. And now today, AIU along with National Law University Delhi has made it possible to host the conference through the virtual mode. We wish that next year we would be able to conduct the conference again in the offline mode on its very Foundation Day, that is 23rd of March. I would like to give a brief introduction about AIU here. Association of Indian Universities is one of the premier higher education institutions of the country, established in 1925. Since its inception, it has been playing a vital role in shaping Indian higher education by being an integral part of all major decision-making committees and commissions. It is a research-based policy advice institution to the Government of India in the field of higher education, sports, and culture. AIU's most important function is to accord equivalence to degrees and qualifications offered by universities across the world, with those offered in India. AIU is a think tank body with the responsibility of undertaking academic activities like conducting research studies in higher education to form a base for policy formulation. It acts as a bureau of information on higher education, liaising with international bodies and universities for internationalization of Indian higher education and many more functions. Here, I would like to emphasize and mention that stalwarts like Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, Dr. Zakir Hussain, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, Dr. K.L. Shrimali, they've all served as presidents of AIU in the past. So it's a matter of pride and honor. As its key functions, AIU interacts with member universities and stakeholders for consultation on regular basis. It also organizes and facilitates zonal meets of its member vice chancellors and leaders of higher education system. It has a key role in shaping higher education, contributing in decision-making committees and commission of higher education in India. Now today in this AIU Foundation Day event, we have distinguished dignitaries present with us, and it's a matter of great honor and pride for us that we have the President of AIU present with us, Professor Tej Pratap Singh. We have the Secretary General of AIU, Dr. Mrs. Pankaj Mittal present today. And it's an honor that for the AIU Foundation Day lecture, we also have with us the Nobel Peace Laureate, Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji. So, sir, आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है, आपका अभिनंदन, हार्दिक अभिनंदन. And now let's start with the. Now let us carry forward and let us start with the conference and the event. So, as I mentioned, that we have with us the President of AIU, Professor Tej Pratap ji. Professor Tej Pratap is the 98th President of AIU, and he's an internationally renowned policy and strategy expert of mountain farming affairs, mountain agriculture, and organic agriculture development strategies. He's been a Vice Chancellor for a long span of 12 years. He has served at CSK Himachal Pradesh Agriculture University, Palampur for 2 terms, Sher Kashmir University of Agriculture, Sciences and Technology, Srinagar, and APJ Shimla University for 1 term each. He's known as a mountain man of agriculture education, and he's internationally known for extensive research in hill and mountain agriculture. He's currently serving Govind Ballabh Pant University of Agriculture and Technology, Pantnagar, as the Vice Chancellor. Sir, आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है और आपका अभिनंदन. I would now request you to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Aparajita Bhatt ji. नमस्कार कैलाश सत्यार्थी जी, मैं तेज प्रताप हूँ. And good morning to all of my colleague honorable vice chancellors. It's my honor to welcome you to this great event. Ordinarily, this is our 94th annual event और हम सब एक जगह मिले होते सारे वाइस चांसलर, तो मजा कुछ और होता है. कैलाश जी आमने सामने होते, पूछने की बात होती. Nevertheless, हम इकट्ठे तो नहीं हो सकते. It's a pity for me as a president, but then we thought of doing something. इस साल की host National Law University. रवीन सिंह जी नमस्कार, and thank you very much for being very magnanimity, your universities and yours to host this one. इस साल का हमारा जो टॉपिक है, पिछले कुछ सालों से we have been focusing on that, reimagining Indian universities. कैलाश सत्यार्थी जी, लगभग 1000 यूनिवर्सिटियां हो गई हैं. पिछले कई वर्षों से हम रीइमेजिन कर रहे हैं, इमेजिन कर रहे हैं कि भविष्य हमारा क्या होगा. हम सुनेंगे आपसे. मेरा ख्याल आप हमें वो सर्कमस्टांसेस बताएंगे दुनिया के कि हमें अपने आप को कैसे शेप करना है. I would like to say here that this is a great time, Corona period. We have this compulsion also thinking कि अब हमारा क्या होगा, एजुकेशन का क्या होगा. And then good thing is कि national education policy भी इन्हीं दिनों में अनाउंस हुई है. So all my vice chancellor colleagues have two things on their plate: a document that tells how we will be structured and how we would be organizing ourselves to make our system competitive, efficient, and futuristic in delivering. At the same time, Corona is telling us the future is going to be very different. बहुत सी तरह से उसमें 2 दिन का कार्यक्रम रखा हुआ है. It's very great that if you see the program that we would be touching during this period on imagining about research and innovation, imagining about governance reforms that we will go through, and towards global best teaching learning practices that we will need to adopt, and then a session on improving access and equity. As usual, हमारा एक concern रहता है कि हमारी global ranking कैसे improve हो. Probably that would also be a focus of one of the sessions. I will not take much of the time right now, and this is about the time जब हमने कैलाश जी को सबसे ज़्यादा वक्त देना है और उनको सुनना है. May I invite my colleague Dr. Pankaj Mittal to introduce a Nobel laureate Kailash Satyarthi ji. Thank you very much indeed.
So thank you so very much. With your permission, Dr. Pankaj Mittal, if I may formally invite you to give your introductory remarks about the AIU Foundation Day lecture, as well as to introduce Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji. But before you do that, I have the honor of introducing you also. So Dr. Pankaj Mittal is the Secretary General of AIU. She is an efficient woman Secretary General of the association, and she has also served as the founder Vice Chancellor of Bhagat Phool Singh Mahila Vishwavidyalay, Kanpur Kala, which is in Haryana. She has been there for 6 years, and she has also served University Grants Commission of India for over 3 decades now in different capacities, including the post of Additional Secretary. I feel honored in announcing this year that Dr. Mittal has been recipient of several awards and honors, including the President of India Award 2017 for Digital Initiative in Higher Education, honoris causa from Karnataka State Women's University, Bijapur. She has also been the recipient of first Padma Shri Subhasini Devi Award 2018 in Societal Development and Community Engagement. As Secretary General, she is instrumental in taking several initiatives for making AIU comparable to its counterparts in other countries. So, Dr. Mittal, I request you to tell us about the Foundation Day of AIU and also to welcome and introduce Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji.
Okay. Thank you, Aparajita. Honorable Nobel Peace Laureate Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji. Professor Ranveer Singh ji, who is hosting this conference, Professor Tej Pratap ji, President of AIU, Dr. Bajpayee, the Registrar of NLU, Dr. K.K. Agarwal has joined us, who has introduced Kailash Satyarthi ji to me, and all the Vice Chancellors who have joined this conference. And ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the first AIU Foundation Day lecture by the Nobel Peace Laureate Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji. Today we are initiating the AIU Foundation Day series. AIU was established on 23rd March 1925, that is 95 years back, and right now we have 810 member universities. So earlier we were celebrating Foundation Day as a family within the AIU office, but from last year onwards we thought that let us celebrate the AIU Foundation Day with all our family members, that is 810 member universities of AIU along with the AIU staff. So we thought of initiating a AIU Foundation Day series, and the first Foundation Day lecture of AIU after 95 years of its history will be held today. And we are so happy that Dr. Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji has kindly consented to deliver the Foundation Day lecture. Rather, it's a matter of pride and honor for us. And I must also admit that I, along with Dr. K.K. Agarwal, when I went to Dr. Kailash Satyarthi ji for delivering the AIU Foundation Day lecture, we were not very sure whether a person of his stature would be able to find time to deliver AIU Foundation Day lecture. But the humbleness with which he agreed to deliver the lecture speaks volumes about the greatness of Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji, who has made India proud by being the 8th Nobel Prize winner of India. I deem it a privilege to introduce Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji to you. Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji has been a tireless global advocate of children's rights for 4 decades now. He left a lucrative career as an electrical engineer and started Bachpan Bachao Andolan, that is Save the Childhood movement, to rescue children and their families from the shackles of slavery, paving way for their reintegration into mainstream society. The movement has rescued over 90,000 children from the scourge of bondage, trafficking, and exploitative labor till date in India. In 1998, Mr. Satyarthi conceived and led the largest civil society network for the most exploited children, the Global March Against Child Labor, that traveled across 103 countries covering 80,000 kilometers. This march led to the adoption of ILO Convention 182 on the worst form of child labor, and Mr. Satyarthi is today credited for establishing RUGMARK. RUGMARK is now known as also Good Weave. It is the first of its kind labeling mechanism for child labor-free carpet. That is, if the RUGMARK is there, then you can be assured that this carpet making did not have child labor in it. In 1914, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for struggle against the suppression of children and young people, and for the right of all children to education. In 2016, Mr. Satyarthi founded a novel and unique initiative called Laureates and Leaders for Children that has brought together several Nobel laureates and leaders from across the globe to ensure the rights and safety of world's children. Mr. Satyarthi unrelenting efforts to end child slavery, trafficking, forced labor, and violence received international support when he succeeded in getting child protection and welfare-related clauses included in Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations back in September 2015. In 2016, Mr. Kailash Satyarthi launched the 100 Million for 100 Million campaign, that is mobilizing 100 million youth for shaping a better future for 100 million children who have been denied their rights and liberties. To realize this vision of ending violence against children, he founded Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation to work towards a child-friendly world where all children are free, safe, healthy, and educated. We are grateful to the Nobel Peace Laureate, Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji, for agreeing to deliver the first AIU Foundation Day lecture and extend a very warm welcome to him. Before inviting him for the Foundation Day lecture, let us view a short film on his life and work. Thank you very much. Thank you. Aparajita.
Thank you, Dr. Mittal. Thank you for your remarks. And now, before I formally request Satyarthi ji to address us, we would like to show a small film, as Dr. Mittal also mentioned. So can we please run the film on the screen?
The Nobel Peace Prize for 2014 is to be awarded to Kailash Satyarthi for their struggle against suppression of young people and children.
There is no greater violence than to deny the dreams of our children. I refuse to accept that the laws and constitutions are unable to protect our children. Today is the time for every child to have the right to life. I refuse to accept that the shackles of slavery can ever be more stronger than the quest for freedom. I refuse to accept here.
Getting a greeting like this is all the reward Kailash Satyarthi needs for freeing these children from a life of slavery. He tries to give these kids the childhood they missed.
Do you think these kids see you as a Nobel Peace Prize winner?
Oh, I don't think they see me as friend or brother or something like father. I have looked into their frightened and exhausted eyes. I've held their injured bodies and I have felt their broken spirits. I refuse to accept that children belonging to certain sections of society are born to work for others at the cost of their childhood and freedom and education. If the children are exploited, if the children are deprived from their childhood in any part of the world cannot live in peace. The world cannot be human.
It's not often the two winners of the Nobel Peace Prize get together, but it happened yesterday when President Obama met Kailash Satyarthi. They were joined by 3 children who were rescued from child trafficking and forced marriage.
You cannot live in isolation. All the problems and solutions are interconnected. And so the problem of child labor in any part of the world is your problem.
Satyarthi organizes raids with local police, but sometimes employers are tipped off and waiting for him armed.
But I have been attacked many times in my life.
You had a gun to your head?
Literally, here.
This is dangerous work, freeing these kids.
Somebody has to pay the cost for freedom. It does not come on plate. So if not me, then who else will do? Who will Nobel Prize?
Who won the Nobel Prize, he asks. Their reply, all of us kids.
It's good. Every single minute matters. Every single child matters. Every single childhood matters.
Thank you very much. And it's absolutely amazing, absolutely incredible, and absolutely inspirational. It's my absolute honor to request the Nobel Peace Laureate Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji to deliver the AIU Foundation Day lecture. Sir, आपका बहुत स्वागत है. Please आप अपने विचार हमारे साथ में शेयर कीजिए. श्री कैलाश सत्यार्थी जी.
सर आपको अनम्यूट करना होगा.
धन्यवाद. आप सबको बहुत बहुत प्रणाम और बहुत बहुत नमस्ते. सबसे पहले तो मैं AIU के फाउंडेशन डे पर आपको मुबारकबाद देता हूं. मेरे लिए तो ये पहला फाउंडेशन डे है जैसा आपने कहा, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि आप सबके लिए ही पहला फाउंडेशन डे होगा, क्योंकि 95 साल पहले ना तो मैं मौजूद था और संभवतः आप में से ज्यादातर लोग मौजूद नहीं थे. तो हम सबके लिए ही पहला फाउंडेशन डे है. तो उसी जॉय के साथ, उसी प्राइड के साथ, उसी लीगेसी के साथ मनाएंगे हम लोग. आदरणीय भाई तेज प्रताप जी को, रणवीर जी को बहन पंकज जी को, अपराजिता को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Dear friends, sisters and brothers, let me begin with a Vedic mantra. This is the first mantra in Rig Veda, which is known as the most ancient book or a divine book of knowledge. At least in India, they believe like that. The first mantra says, Agni Mide Purohitam Yajasva Devam Mrityujam Hotaram Ratna Dhatam. It has a very contextual meaning for this event particularly. It says, those who believe in the betterment of humanity and society, teachers, gurus, come together, assemble at one place, and then put your best. Yajna means putting the best for multiplication and betterment for others. That is the literal meaning of yajna. So, Agni Mide Purohitam, let us ignite the fire of knowledge, the fire of wisdom, the fire of love, the fire of compassion, but more essentially the fire of knowledge. Hotaram Ratna Dhatana. When we do it like that, when we put best of our knowledge and thoughts and multiply it for the betterment of everyone, then it could be or it should be converted for the wealth and prosperity for all. So, thousands of years ago, Indian rishis could vision that every time we have to keep in mind that how we can collectively produce and give back the best of our knowledge for all, for the betterment of all, and eventually for the prosperity of everyone. This is the economic interpretation of knowledge, or the education interpretation of economy. This is the first mantra. Today, what you are doing is exactly the same. If you want to make sure that everybody should benefit of your knowledge, and everybody should eventually be prosperous, happy, healthy, then this is the appropriate time. And let me underline here very carefully, very clearly. It is not out of my humility or politeness, as Behan Pankaj ji has pointed out. It is truth. If I sit in the feet of many of you for years to learn knowledge, to be educated about certain issues, it will take me years. And I'm very frank in saying it. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to teach you or doing anything as celebrity, as one of the students or as one of the pupils at one of the people who are struggling to rediscover or to discover the truth. As my name says, Satyarthi, it's very similar to Vidyarthi. So it makes me like that to tell you and address you as my brothers and sisters. Dear friends, I would also start by congratulating Government of India for changing the name of this ministry. This is something which I have been raising and many of us have been raising. We have been even raising our eyebrows that why we think that knowledge, education is human resource. When we say human resource development, it looks like the mineral resource development, water resource development, energy, alternate energy resource development. So human resource development. How can you put human beings and rest of the things in one basket? Education is different than the human resource. Because that is the entire philosophy and outlook. I need not to tell it here, but education is beyond the knowledge. Education is much more deeper. It is not always to count GDP. When you sit on the chair of a vice chancellor, it is not just you you are someone who is transferring knowledge or information or data to your students. As a teacher also, because in India, the teachers were named as Guru. Guru means someone who lives with what he or she teaches or speaks, and that makes him powerful, gravitas, and that makes us Guru. So, you are all gurus who are sitting here. You are not there for GDP growth. So you're not creating growth engines, or neither you are the one who are just brainwashing or making young people, students, as the fuel or the part or lubricant or tool of a growth engine. Remember, when India was Sone ki Chidiya, जब भारत सोने की चिड़िया था, golden bird means the most prosperous piece of planet, India was also Jagat Guru. It was never happened, it was never possible that India could have become the 20% GDP growth rate country. We don't know, we didn't have these measurements those days, but it was clear that India was the most prosperous place, but India was also the place of knowledge. But that knowledge was not just to transfer to each other, that knowledge was to live with, and that makes education. So Indian heritage is much more deeper. And the world was trying to figure out how to learn basic things of material or basic things of calculation. India has established universities like Takshashila and Nalanda, and the world was coming not to learn the material science, but was coming to inculcate the human values which make this world a universal place or one place to live together. There's also enhancing. That was also enhancing the spiritual power of human being and potential of human beings. So universities in India has helped in material science, but also the human science and the science of soul, the science of divinity. And that has been the power of India's universities, and that made us different from others. And that was our heritage, dear friends. Now, we all know that COVID-19, this pandemic, has brought unprecedented amount of fear, anxiety, uncertainty, and lot of other problems. But we also know that it is not simply the health crisis, which is obvious, which is visible, and it is not only the economic crisis, which is unfortunately resulting in dipping the economic growth globally as well as in every single country. And that is a serious economic challenge. But this crisis is much more deeper and much more dangerous than what we think. It is also the crisis of civilization. I'm not going into the details of definitions of civilization, but the collective way of living, collective way of thinking, collective way of practicing, that makes a civilization. This crisis is disturbing it because the collectivity is lost. We are all sitting in our rooms, on our tables. A few of you can come together, but normally, as Tej Pratapji has pointed out, that if it was not the crisis period, then I would have met you personally, I would have interacted with you personally, and all of you could have done mutually that kind of interaction. So this is dividing the society in a way. So what a paradox that on one hand, we are forced to learn interdependence. We cannot think of living without each other. We cannot solve the problem in isolation. We have to think collectively and solve the problem collectively, because there is no way that we can solve this problem or the post-COVID-19 situation as one country or as one individual or society or leader. We, as 88 Nobel laureates, not peace laureates. The number of peace laureates who are living today is not more than 2024, 22, 23. So 88 Nobel laureates from all disciplines, but also the global leaders, former presidents, former prime ministers, etc., have consulted with each other, and then we had come out with a collective statement and demand to rich countries as well as individual countries. What we have demanded that there should be fair share for COVID-19 response funds, in COVID-19 response funds. What does it mean? The global community so far, especially the rich countries, industrialized countries, G20 countries, have earmarked or announced at least more than $6 trillion as COVID response fund in post-COVID-19 situation. And that is mainly for bailing out their banks and financial institutions in rich countries, and also bailing out the economy, the industries and corporations. But when we talk of devoting a certain amount of, a certain percentage of money for the most marginalized people, it is still a serious challenge. So what we demanded collectively as Nobel laureates, that 20% of COVID-19 fund, response fund, must be spent for most marginalized 20% children primarily, but their families as well. So 20% for 20%, that is a fair share. Why we are saying it? Because it is also going to affect the university education as whole, higher education also. Today, 1.5 to 1.6 billion young people are not attending schools globally. Primary, secondary, and tertiary education. So, out of these 1.5 or 1.6 billion, 380 million children are solely dependent on conditional cash transfers or school feeding program, what we call in India midday meal program. So globally, 360 million children and families were solely depending on it. In this crisis, in the last few months, it is not possible because that was directly connected with the school attendance. And since children are not going to school, how long the governments and society would be able to distribute food or money, which is quite cumbersome, very difficult. So the danger is imminent that a large number of children, millions of children, dozens of millions of children may drop out, and they would not be going to come back to the classes once this pandemic is over. That we have seen in case of Ebola, for example, in West African countries. When it has broken out, schools were closed for months, and children did not return back. And many of these children, I visited those areas, I have met with those children, I'm working with them, and for them, those who were forced to become child prostitutes, those who will become forced to become child slaves, child laborers. Many of the girls were married in early age, and especially the children who are in move, the refugee children, or those who were already vulnerable economically, socially, politically, they are going to suffer the most. If such a large number of children are going to drop out, then think of the lot which is going to be enrolled in universities in next 5 years and 4 years. Then such children cannot enter in higher education. This problem was already there. The poorest of the poor, the marginalized people could not send their children to higher education. Children have to go to work and earn money for family and livelihood. But now because of this crisis, a large section of marginalized and poor children would not be able to sit and compete with the elite children. And when we come to university situation, when I talk to many of the young people who are volunteering and working with us for years, and those who are in some of the top universities in the world. You name anyone, and we have volunteers from every single university. And when I talk to them, I realize that they are feeling stressed. Some of them are depressed. Many of them are feeling anxiety due to loneliness, though they are all bright young people. But they are caught with a lot of psychological and mental issues while living there. And they say that there is no replacement, there is no substitute to campus life. The student life, we all, when you remember our student life, it was a fun, it was a challenge, it was taking risk, it was making friends, it was falling into love and then falling out. All kind of things were happening when we were students. But this is not happening now, sitting in a room and then on your table doing everything online. So that is a serious danger. But equally think of the future situation, because I'm afraid that something which was supposed to happen in 20 years' time, this is happening now. Many of the big companies, Google, like Facebook, many companies have announced that they are more comfortable in online activities, including the work from home. So if their employees, hundreds of thousands of their employees are working at home, then the whole dynamics of market and society will change. And it's changing already. So students will have to face much more problems. But when it comes to teachers, I'm afraid to say, dear sisters and brothers, and this could be a serious problem in the future, that on one hand, we in India have come back that education is not just the human resource, it is education. Those philosophical, paradigm shift. But technology and artificial intelligence, robotism, automation, all kind of virtual reality or augmented reality, all these new technologies would lead to a situation where education will not remain the value of life. Education is going to be, or knowledge is going to be, the open market of knowledge. So we are creating an open market of knowledge where consumers or customers or buyers who can buy the best type of knowledge and information can log on and can pay something through internet banking and get in touch with a professor from Berkeley or Harvard or Cambridge or Oxford University. So why that young person who wanted to get the best possible knowledge will not go? If one can afford to get knowledge, then one would try to learn lectures or listen lectures from some of the top professors of the world in that field. So their market will grow. But what is going to happen with many of our universities when the students are not willing, their parents are not willing to pay that amount of fees which is being given now? There was big debate in France. France is a better place in terms of university education because the constitution provides completely free education and lifelong learning, constitutionally guaranteed. So the higher education is almost free or free. But in case of England, for example, UK, or in case of United States of America, where education is very expensive and most of the young people have to borrow money from the banks, there is a big debate. Student leaders and their unions are not willing to pay that much amount of money, from 9,000 to 18,000 pounds in England or 70,000 dollars in USA. Students are saying, their parents are saying that we are not going to pay that money because it's online and online is almost cheap. So the infrastructure cost is gone. The number of teachers is shrinking, and that will shrink more because the knowledge would be available. So teachers are like guru. They are mentors. Their life is inspiration. They learn not only from the words, they learn from the student, learn from the lives of their teachers. That culture is vanishing, unfortunately, and we have to be prepared for that. That how we are going to meet out with these challenges. So, dear friends, these are some of the serious challenges when we are losing community, when we are facing the economic crisis for survival without fees and other things. It is very, very difficult that any government in any country would be able to bail out all universities in such a way if the education is almost free. I'm not sure. Am I online? Somebody can say that. Yeah. Are you able to listen to me? आप मुझे सुन रहे हैं? ठीक है. क्योंकि आप डिसअपियर हो गई हैं पराजिता जी, तो फिर हम अपने आप को पराजित महसूस करने लगे. जब अपराजिता सामने बैठती है तो फिर लगता है कि हमारी बहन हमें पराजित नहीं होने देगी. तो मैं भी पूछने लगा आपसे. Thank you. Lovely, lovely. So now we have to prepare ourselves. When I was reading the title of this conference or this Foundation Day, Reimagining Indian Universities, something which comes to my mind that when we reimagine Indian universities, I underline here, we reimagine the future of India. We reimagine the future of our nation. We reimagine universal responsibility and accountability. And eventually we reimagine entire humanity. India has to think that how we are going to lead in the next 20 years or 15 years. Slogans cannot make us the leaders. The leadership should come inside each one of us. And we have to feel, not just one person or two people or 20 or 100. Every one of you who is sitting here, you have to acknowledge yourself that you are the real leaders who is going to shape a new civilization, a new culture, a new country, and a new world as vice chancellors. So let us begin with something. India's core strength or core value lies in reinventing the morality. Our values are, we say it in our slogans that we believe in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, we believe in Sangachadam, Samvadadvam, we believe in oneness of humankind, etc., etc. But belief is something, then practice is much more deeper. So we have to practice those things. Nobody can compete with India, let me underline here once again, when India stands with strongest possible moral courage and moral voice. That morality has been our strength. But how the Western dominance of culture, how the colonialism, how a kind of inferiority complex because of अंग्रेजी में गिटर पिटर करने की वजह से, अंग्रेजी तौर तरीकों से जिंदगी जीने की वजह से जो हम लोगों के भीतर घुस गई चीज, तो हम लोग फिर मजबूती के साथ खड़े नहीं हो पाते. सो हमारी मजबूती कायम है, हमारी मजबूती है हमारे मूल्यों में, हमारे आदर्शों में. So when we talk of reimagining universities, we have to talk of moral imagination also. The world, the wind of the world, culture and civilization is a wind of imagining power, imagining authority, imagining material gains, imagining fames, names. And that is a kind of career making. Everybody is taught like that you have to score more marks right from the childhood. You have to show off yourself that you are best in the world. What about others? Leaving others behind and you wanted to show off yourself, that can never be education. Education means how to learn to live together, how to support each other, and then not imagine your material gains. Moral imagination. Moral imaginations are different than the imaginations which we have. And that we have to inculcate among the young people and students. And that is not possible without the youth, without the young people. And you are the custodians of youth of this country, dear sisters and brothers. You are the conscience keeper of this country, and you are the keeper of the truth. You are not simply professors and teachers who have studied hard and then earning good life and good money. That is not the case. So, as I said before, that you are going to shape a new India. I would also suggest that you said that you are like think tank. If AIU is a think tank, I remember once I was invited for an award, a Wallenberg Award in Michigan University, and some of the top people from other universities were also present when they were giving me this award many years ago, 20 years ago. And then I was introduced to a think tank. A few think tanks, but one think tank in the university was solely dedicated for the future of India. I was amazed, actually. I was so surprised that some of the top professors and students and young people and elderly ones were sitting together, 6 or 7 people with me, and they were imagining India, what is India is going to do in 20, 25 years, socially, economically, politically, etc., etc. They were not just, there must be many more think tanks which were imagining for their own country, but they were imagining for India. There was another think tank for China. There were several think tanks for emerging economies. India was one of them. So they were like that. So I was just thinking now that each of the vice chancellors will, if you can think of creating a small think tank in each university, where the 4 core disciplines, the professors or experts, as well as students could be brought in. One is politics. How the future politics in 20 years is going to shape. The second thing is that how the economy, the markets are going to take shape in next 20 years, 25 years. Similarly, technology. Such fast growth of technology, which is beyond imagination, which nobody can imagine what is going to happen tomorrow. But think of a situation that something will grow. And fourthly, the society. The social contradictions, some anthropologists or social scientists can come in that think tank and can sit together and exchange information, exchange ideas, and then come out, this is going to happen probably. These are the probabilities in next 20 years. So if you have that vision, India in 20 years, because sometimes we listen to the slogan that India is going to become the world leader in next 5 years or 10 years. It's great. That gives us strength, moral strength. But more importantly, that there should be more academic and intellectual effort be made to imagining India in 20 years, and then you can synchronize the education, universities. How now that would be a great contribution for shaping a new India, but also it would be helpful in readjusting your own curricula, your own subjects, your own issues, that how we are going to prepare our students for that. For example, many of those vocations or job opportunities would be lost in post-COVID-19. This working from home and all kind of things, artificial intelligence will lead to tremendous consequences in jobs, which we all know. What kind of new job opportunities? So when we talk of education, I always say that talk of 3 more E's with education. So one E is employability. I am afraid that the present day education, or the education which has been there for decades, is not going to create adequate number of employments. No country can create adequate number of employment only through education until and unless we think of adding a strong component of employability. Government of India is making a lot of efforts. I congratulate them that they started thinking in new education policy, that how skill building could be prioritized in education and so on. So universities can think of creating employment. The second thing is empowerment. After 74 years of independence, think of Adivasis, Dalits, think of marginalized sections and minorities in some places, think of women and girls, think of many other sections of society which are not yet appropriately empowered to be the real player in Indian democracy. If the democracy is driven by the caste and communal sentiment, it means people are not yet properly empowered. Also, people are not properly educated, not just through schooling and universities, but also society itself should educate the people and empower them to use the power of democracy, the power of opportunities. India has tremendous opportunities, we can use it. So empowerment is the second E. And the third E is equity. We have to create equity in the society where we have to feel that everyone is equal. When the Vedas say, Sangachadvam, Samvadadvam, Sambho Manansi Janatam, Deva Bhagam Yatha Purve Sanjananam Upasate. What a great message. Let us walk together. Nobody is left behind. We have to create a level playing field so that we can walk together. That has been said by our rishis thousands of years ago. So let us talk together so that we can listen to each other, we can learn from each other, and we have to create a knowledge. Sanjananam upasate. Let us come together and sit together to create a knowledge which is knowledge for all. So how we are going to create knowledge for all? If knowledge, apartheid is created in the world, that the most sophisticated knowledge is in the hands of fewer people, and we put it as we keep our capital inside our treasure. Knowledge is treasure, but it is treasure for all, knowledge for all. We all can make some contribution in it. You can also think of the new avenues of jobs like counseling. I learned from some of my young friends that they spend a lot of money in psychological counseling. They go to counselors. Online counseling has become a big business now. So, and this is going to happen. So why not this psychological counseling, which is not really driven by the Western values and Western methodologies. Of course, the scientific knowledge has to be gained and scientific way have to be invented, but it should be deep-rooted in Indian ethos and Indian culture, the culture which is liberative. I'm not talking about the culture which makes, which creates caste system, or the culture which, diminishes the power and dignity of a woman. That is unacceptable. But the culture which empowers us, the culture which liberates us, have to be utilized in counseling methodologies and so on. So, dear friends, I once again express my gratitude, but at this juncture, I would also say that you have to think that when the technology is going to convert the human mind and human life as machine, how are you going to challenge it? How are you going to keep humanity alive through your universities, through your education? And that is possible through compassion. Compassion is not empathy or sympathy. Sympathy is the outermost circle. When you feel the suffering of others, you can become sympathetic, and that is not a bad idea. But then the inner circle is empathy, when you feel the suffering of others as your own suffering. But the compassion is much more deeper. Means you feel the suffering of others as your own suffering with a desire and drive to take action to end that suffering. That makes you a compassionate person. How you can inculcate the value of compassion in education? So compassionate society could be created. The compassionate world could be created. We can be compassionate and that we can learn from you. The second thing which is related to it is also gratitude. You can teach gratitude. I am sitting here in this safe room and I am grateful to all those laborers, workers, masons, electrician, plumber, someone who has built this chair, the carpenter. I'm feeling grateful to all of them. I have already had a cup of coffee when you came here. I was having coffee. So I'm thankful to coffee growers and all those who have supplied me the coffee, not just my cook. Everyone. There's a long chain of gratitude. So we have to create the supply chain of gratitude. And finally, we have to feel mutually responsible for each other. That value has to be inculcated in action in online practices as well as in the universities. Once they open, you are the leaders and spark. Again, I would sum up with saying, when Vedas say, Vayam Rashtre Jagrayamah Purohitam, means let us come together and awaken the whole world. हमको पूरी दुनिया को जगाना है अपने ज्ञान के जरिए और यूथ को आप मेहरबानी करके शामिल कीजिए. We have launched a campaign which was just mentioned, 100 million for 100 million campaign. The youth are ready to take up challenges. If we are not going to give them purpose of life and platform to act and trust that we are with you and we are working with you and recognize the potential inside a young person in university, then we will lose if we don't recognize it. We will lose the whole generation. So we have to recognize it, inculcate it, empower it, and 100 million young people should be the change makers and champions for 100 million young people who are left out, who are facing violence in many forms. I am ready to work with each one of you. All of you, we can work together in inculcating all those things, adding up those ideas. You should not feel that Kailash Satyarthi is a guest and a very special celebrity and was able to find some time. But for my sisters and brothers who are teachers in this country, vice chancellors, my young friends, students in your universities, I am prepared to spend more time, but I am going to work with you, learn from you, but we together can reimagine great India as Sone Ki Chidiya and Jagat Guru Bharat. Dhanyavad. Namaste.
Thank you so much, sir. And ये हमारा सौभाग्य है कि आज आप हमारे बीच में आए और आपने अपने विचार हमारे साथ में रखे. You have rightly mentioned that professors, teachers, and gurus, they don't create the growth engines. Universities and gurus, they build civilizations. They don't create factories or workshops. You also rightly mentioned that we are facing a time of a time where there's a crisis of civilization, and the responsibility, the roles of gurus and universities becomes very important to sort out this crisis, and settle down everything. आपने एक बहुत ही अच्छी बात कही, which was an inspirational statement from you, that how vice chancellors and professors and academicians, they are the real leaders in this new world order, the new world order which is now created after COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, our core strength is our morality that we still have in ourselves. It's just about keeping alive that morality and passing it on to the new generation, to the young students, to the young professors. So it's all a game of keeping alive compassion, gratitude, and passing it on to the next generation. So thank you so much, sir. आपने अपने विचार हमारे साथ में रखे. आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you all.
And now I would request Dr. S. Rama Devipani to give vote of thanks. Dr. Rama is the editor of the University News, a weekly journal of higher education brought out by the Association of Indian Universities. She's known in the country for meticulous editing and persistent clockwise regularity in bringing out the weekly journal. Apart from 150 special issues and more than 1,000 regular issues of the university news, she has to her credit 200 editorials, 5 books, 2 question banks, and 20 papers. And earlier, she's also worked with MHRD, NIOS, IGNOU, and NCERT. Dr. Rama, I request you to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Aparajita. Honorable Nobel Peace Laureate Kailash Satyarthi ji, esteemed President of Association of Indian Universities, Professor Tejpal ji, respected Madam Pankaj Mittal, Secretary General AIU, esteemed Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Professor Ranbir Singh, all the Vice Chancellors who are attending this August function, and friends. A proud privilege and of Association of Indian Universities and National Law University, Delhi, and to express gratitude to Kailash Satyarthi ji this function. 94 years is no mean feat. In these 94 years, many institutions have come up, slipped into oblivion. An institution distinct in character, distinct in nature, the resilient and resolute AIU traversed this long distance and achieved several landmarks in the field of higher education at national and international level. In this voyage of AIU, there is contribution of several dedicated personalities. As Kailash Satyarthi ji said, we have to express our gratitude to everyone. In the same line, I am paying my tributes to all those who have contributed to growth and development of Association of Indian Universities. Today is one more historical day for AIU, as we have none other than Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji to deliver the foundation lecture. Sir, indeed, we are fortunate to have you here. Shri Kailash Satyarthi ji is a big name in the world, renowned social reformer, crusader of human rights, international child rights activist, and for child rights and outstanding contribution to the humanity. Sir, we are very thankful for your august presence here and delivering the Foundation Day lecture. Your gracious presence has added color and grace to the occasion. I endorse what Aparajita said about your deliberations, about your speech. It's really true that reimagining Indian universities is not just reimagining the universities. We are reimagining New India. We are reimagining the humanity. So we all have to be leaders and talk together, discuss together, and realize this aim of reimagining the new India, new world, taking new from the new things and from the traditions as well. Satyarthi ji spoke about our glorious tradition as well as the things in our tradition. No words are adequate to express gratitude to you, sir, a person of such eminence. Thank you so much, sir, once again on behalf of AIU, on behalf of NLU, and on behalf of all the Vice Chancellors who are present here. I am also thankful to Honorable President AIU for being here and gracing the occasion. And I am very, very thankful to Madam Pankaj Mittal to have thought of celebrating this Foundation Day and inviting such an eminent personality. And we got opportunity to hear to Kailash Satyarthi ji today being with us. Thank you so much, Madam. And I thank all the Vice Chancellors who are present here and all the dignitaries who are here. And thank you one and all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And dignitaries who have joined us and made this a wonderful session. Please note that the inaugural session of the AIU Annual National Conference of Vice Chancellors shall start at 12 noon. For the inaugural session, we'll have Honorable Union Minister of Education, Dr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank ji with us. There's a separate link for joining the inaugural session. The link will be shown on your screen in 2 minutes. So thank you once again, everyone. Please stay safe, please stay healthy. Namaskar. Thank you.
Prajita, since it is already 12 noon, more than 12 noon, 12:05, So we will start the inaugural session immediately. So we request all the Vice Chancellors to kindly join on the link given in the side notice board.
Sure, ma'am. I request, as we've already exceeded the time, it's already 12:05. We would immediately start with the inaugural session, and I would request all the Vice Chancellors to join the inaugural session through the link which is shown on the screen. We'll start it in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
स्क्रीन शेयर स्टॉप कर